confident that we'll be world champions.
What in the ham fat is going on with you guys?
9 to noon.
Buffalo Wild Wings. Listen closely for a very important announcement. Over here to the left, Boogie Bob is celebrating his 55th birthday. Happy birthday, Boogie Bob. Boogie on down with Bob. Happy birthday.
He looks like he's got the boogie in him right now.
He's got some boogie.
He's got some boogie in him.
It is now post time for the Fantasy Football Feast featuring Paul Charchi and Guillotine League, guillotineleagues.com. Empty your notebook with Vikings and Seahawks and fantasy wherewithal into a week like this, which for most leagues, I would imagine, semifinal week? Is it like
it's semifinals in regular leagues? Yeah. Guillotine League, you're down to 3 teams.
Yeah,
it is tricky right now.
So the words Paul Charchian is about to share, the words that he will share are very, very important for the financial wherewithal of all of your lives. Listen very closely. Take it away.
Well, let's start with Jackson Smith and Jigba, who we talked to with Softy, because if you show me his box score, I'm going to feel pretty good about which way this game goes.
Yeah.
He has become so important to that offense.
Yeah.
He runs almost entirely from the slot, Paul, and this has been a problem for the Vikings. Now, the Vikings don't have a pure slot cornerback like most teams do.
Byron Murphy Jr.
They will use Byron the most, but he's only 35% in the slot.
Yeah.
They use Josh Metellus. They will use linebackers. They will use Harrison Smith. They will, this is part of Brian Flores. He gives you no consistency with which to plan around. But the Vikings have struggled with slot receivers lately. Just in the second half of the season, we've seen Keenan Allen post 2 good games against the Vikings running largely from the slot. Ray McLeod 2 weeks ago went 8 catches, 90 yards, running almost entirely from the slot.
Mm-hmm.
Cooper Kupp, Josh Downs, all in the second half of the season with good games as slot receivers.
Yeah.
And that's going to be, and this might be the best of the bunch that they faced in Jackson Smith and Jigba. And so tracking him is going to be really, really important. But when most people think about the Seattle receivers, they go immediately to DK Metcalf.
Yeah.
Because he's such a beast. He is so physically different from every other wide receiver in the league. At 6'5", 230 pounds, there's nobody like him.
Right.
But he's been weirdly inefficient and underused in this offense to a great degree.
So Smith and Jigba is about 1,000 yards, like 994 or something.
That to this point. Yeah.
Yep, that's good. Just 5 touchdowns. I thought he had more touchdowns when I started deep diving it, and I think a couple of 100-yard games maybe. So when you say like he's really taken off, is that comparatively speaking to his rookie year?
Rookie year and the first half of this year. Yep, and it has been something that's really evolved from really kind of November forward.
Got it.
Where he has become their go-to receiver.
Mm-hmm.
And Tyler Lockett has just turned into a non-factor in this offense because of the reps that are going to Smith and Jigba.
Yeah, he's having the worst season of his career.
He is. And he is, they love him there as a person, and they love his career. Tyler Lockett was one of these undrafted kids, small school, as I recall.
Yep.
Nobody expected anything.
Might have been K-State.
It might have been. Worked his way up, Liberal, Texas, if it was K-State.
Dallas.
Yeah, and it's been a great career for Tyler Lockett, but near the end of that.
Before we segue to the purple and the fantasy wherewithal there, tell me why this is a foolhardy take, or if it is.
Sure.
Now, I just heard you and Soft talk about the potency or the lack thereof, the impotent nature of the Seattle Seahawks offensive line. I'm not so far down the road on it, where I know they don't run a lot. I know they throw markedly more than they run. However, Kenneth Walker is the type of back that has given the Minnesota Vikings problems this year. Physical type back who wants to bang on you and bounce. He's like James Conner. He doesn't play quite the way James Conner does, but the Arizona approach with Conner, physical, and it worked. Then you get Bijan Robinson the next game. Now Algier is the physical one of the two. Okay, well, he gets half the carries, but he got into the end zone. And when Bijan was getting into the end zone, man, I mean, the holes were cavernous. I mean, they were big, big holes. Kenneth Walker, if they commit to him I think he's a sneaky good fantasy start this weekend.
I do too, Paul. And we talked earlier in the show about how the Vikings defense without Ivan Pace is really a middle-of-the-pack defense instead of the elite run defense that it is when he plays.
Yeah.
And Kenneth Walker, when healthy, dude's a beast. I mean, you mentioned the physical part of his game, but the other part is the footwork on a guy his size is not normal, and he will be slippery and give defenders bad angles on tough tackles.
And he catches it a fair amount, right?
He can. When Ryan...
Like 37 catcher or 45 or something?
Earlier this year, Ryan Grubb was doing whatever it took to get Kenneth Walker the ball, and if the running game wasn't going, he would modify mid-game, and he'd just start throwing balls to Kenneth Walker to get him the ball in space. They haven't done that as much because he's been playing hurt, and they had been rotating in Charbonnet, and they were just limiting his reps. But with Kenneth Walker off the injury report as of yesterday, he might be at 100%. And this game may go through a lot on Kenneth Walker, more so than any game in the past month or two.
Yeah, but see, wouldn't the super special offensive coordinator have to change his tendency? I mean, Grubbs, whatever you guys were talking about. Yeah. I mean, during the course of the year, they've had that physical back with Charbonnet as the complement.
Yeah.
But they just haven't committed to it.
Yeah, they largely they have not. And I think it's just a lot of a faltering offense, and sometimes they're playing from behind early. Packers got way out ahead. Buffalo got way out ahead. And sometimes the running game's just been abandoned, and probably a little bit too quickly for him. But I think you raised a really good point. Watch out for Walker in the passing game. He can hurt you there. He gets the ball in space, and you've got a problem when it's him against a cornerback.
Yeah,
and because he can make that cornerback miss that tackle.
Let's hit the Vikings portion of the equation. Plus, I have some questions about Malik Neighbors, A.J. Brown, Michael Penix Jr.
Yeah,
and weather and the potential of weather-related games. Plus, the Lions off the loss of David Montgomery. I mean, this is money time in fantasy football, and Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta might not be as effective this game. Moving forward, I think they will. But this individual game, outdoors against Chicago on that wonky turf, with potentially super strong winds, it very much could impact that game. So a lot on which to chew with Paul Charchian around the corner, or coming up a little later, because around the corner, Nordo leads us through Vikes Bites on KFAN. Buffalo Wild Wings, Apple Valley, welcome back. It is now post time for Vikes Bites. Here comes Nordo on a snowy Friday on KFAN.
Vikes Bites.
Vikes Bites is brought to you by Thousand Hills Lifetime Grazed Grass-Fed Beef. And you can shop online. A box of meat will show up at your doorstep. You can also go to your local Coburns, your local co-ops locations. Thousand Hills Lifetime Grazed. Justin Jefferson, PA, was addressing the media yesterday. I have a bunch of audio and some talkers to bounce off of it, but we're going to start with Justin Jefferson and his thoughts about Aaron Jones.
His ability to fight for those extra yards, his ability to step in and make those key blocks for Sam that has that blitzer coming in, and just his efforts to go in and no matter what happens, no matter if he fumbles, no matter if he drops the ball, no matter if he misses a block, he's going to move on to the next play, come back out there with his brothers, and he's going to keep fighting and keep going.
Well, I don't like that fumbling part, but I like Aaron Jones. The Packers PA last weekend, they opened their drive with what I call the Josh Jacobs drive. It featured 2 receptions, 7 carries by Jacobs, the last one being a plunge into the end zone. 34 rush attempts overall in the game for the Pack. Can the Vikings commit to asserting their will on the ground and neutralizing that Seahawks defense, giving some potential weather terrorism out there at Lumen?
Yeah, I like how you added the weather part to the end of the equation there, because Jordan Love is not as good as Sam Darnold. Now, over the course of if you got 32 GMs and you're kind of like, which one do you want for 10 years? I can't speak for what they would say. I'm saying Sam Darnold has been a better quarterback and more reliable than Jordan Love this season. I'm also saying Romeo Doubs, Dontavian Wicks, and Jaden Reed are they're not Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. So this is a pass-first team because that's how the coach operates it, with high-end talent who can catch the ball. But there needs to be a complementary side of it with the run. Aaron is not. He's faster than Josh Jacobs. He catches it better than Josh. He's not going to pound on you with what they're doing and doing very adroitly. I mean, I really, really like the segue in offense to take pressure off Jordan Love at this stage of the season with Josh Jacobs. So, Paul, Aaron Jones, I'm not saying he's an enigma, but it's tough to prognosticate what you're going to get from him on a weekly basis.
It is.
Because if they target Jefferson 12 times and Addison 9 and Hawkinson 8, I'm not mad at that. You know what I mean?
Well, where I would be worried is that would suggest that the Vikings are playing from behind if we're peppering that many targets at our key players. But those are all players that can make great productivity out of that many targets. So
right.
That part doesn't bother me.
Right.
But if you tell me Aaron Jones has got a 21 carry game, I feel pretty good that we won that game. And Jones is a little bit enigmatic. We've seen inconsistent results, but I think a lot of what KOC said is true. He's the most dynamic of our backs. He's the best tackle breaker. He doesn't give up on a play at all. He works, and I like all those things. The Seattle run defense is actually kind of sneaky good.
Is it?
It is. Let me give you some stats to back that up.
Mm-hmm.
From November forward, they rank number 2 in run defense success rate. And from November forward, no back has topped 90 yards. This has been a good defense. Oh, by the way, only one touchdown, I believe, is since November. So this is a tricky, a sneaky good run defense. Not great. Vikings can be a great run defense. They're good. But Jones has been bankable. Touchdowns in 4 straight games. And that was something that had eluded Jones for a while. We like to see him scoring touchdowns, and I want to think that that's going to continue here.
Vikes Bites. Thank you, Thousand Hills. Here's Justin Jefferson again with the media yesterday. The Seahawks got a great pair of corners.
They're definitely talented. That's without a doubt. It's just the physicality that they play in, the height man over there, him being so tall and so lengthy. It's definitely difficult to go against those type of corners that have so much area that they can cover at one time. So it definitely will be difficult, going against those type of corners, but we're ready for the matchup at any time.
So those corners being Reek Woolen, who is a physical specimen that you just have to see in person, a cornerback that is 6'4" and plays at about 215 pounds. He's a freaking monster. Then they have the Illinois cat, Devin Witherspoon. I don't know if he's nickel or if he runs outside. Josh Jobe / Josh Joby. Really don't know much about him, but it sounds like a lot of zone this weekend, and it sounds like they may not be traveling. And maybe weather is drilled into this part of the conversation, too. How do we like Sam getting up and down the field on these guys?
If that intel is accurate and they play a lot of zone defense, it's what has really gotten up to speed with TJ Hawkinson the last couple of games and Darnold. Okay, so O'Connell will put the thing in. And then I don't know if it's, you have one play and 5 tentacles off of it. That's, how things have worked before. But if they show man defense and that's what you think, and then they settle back into a sneaky zone, that's when you see Hawkinson getting reception after reception after reception. TJ Hawkinson is really making zone defenders pay ever since that Bears game in the second half. So if you have TJ Hawkinson on a fantasy team and what the con just shared, ends up playing out accurate in the game and they play a lot of zone, I'm telling you, man, TJ's going to have more than 100 yards and probably his first touchdown this season. What do you think?
The best cornerback is not Tariq Woolen. I think it's Devin Witherspoon, who's really good. Sophomore, he's very good. He is slot guy.
Yeah.
And now the Vikings.
Wow. He plays out of the slot being that big.
Yeah, I know.
Wow.
And that's changed across the across the NFL. It didn't used to be as much that way.
Mm-hmm.
Now for the Vikings. This year, they haven't had, the true slot receiver. Instead, they run Justin Jefferson, a third of his routes from the slot. Jordan Addison, third of his routes from the slot. They put their best players in the slot regularly, and they'll move Naylor around and different stuff, but they don't have that true slot receiver like they used to, and I love that because it gives you all the options on who you want to identify with your best receivers, Addison and Jefferson, and so I think you can find matchups you like. Now, the guy that's interesting that they mentioned is Reek Woolen, and by the way, it's no longer Tyreek. You might have to update the call sheet.
No, it's Reek Woolen, but did he officially change his name? So it's like a Meta World Peace bit.
It is.
Oh, come on.
It is. He's Reek now.
Well, it's way better. It's way better than Meta World Peace, though. At least it's a shortened version of his original name.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know who gave him his name Tariq, but somebody gave him his name Tariq, so it was important to them. It's kind of like, hey,
at a time,
that's my God-given name here, but I'm just going to go ahead and change it to Reek. But
it's a good point,
cool, man.
Yeah, at least it's not a total diversion. Earlier in the year, Reek Woolen had a Reek on Reek matchup with Tyreek Hill.
Oh, wow.
It was a Reek matchup.
Holy
I
cow.
know. Not enough people talked about that.
And
I
the
thought,
one that
that was a very special moment.
And the one that performs most poorly, indeed, is the one who reeks most.
There you go.
Vikes Bites!
Vikes Bites with a lot of beef. A lot of beef in a box here this Christmas season, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, Vikes Bites. I didn't know if you were going to finish your thought on Reek, but...
Reek,
well, when you said Vikes Bites, I thought that was the transition right there.
No, I clipped. So, Reek Woolen.
Reek Woolen. Okay, here's what you need to know about Reek Woolen.
Well, I'm trying to figure out the pronunciation of Joby.
Reek Woolen, gambler. He is one of those handful of cornerbacks out there that will try to make the big defensive play.
Yep.
And if it blows up, fine. He's given up 6 touchdowns in his coverage already. That is 4th most in the NFL.
Yeah.
But you will also see that he's got picks. He's got passes broken up. He is a gambler. Can you bait Reek Woolen into trying to make a play that other cornerbacks wouldn't? That is possible.
Vikes Bites for real this time, brought to you by Thousand Hills. I got some audio from Geno Smith talking about playing on that bum knee.
A lot of guys are less than 100%. I've, been that way, pretty much the majority of the season. That's just the way the NFL goes, but no excuses. Got to go out there and perform.
Yeah, so he's right. I get that. He's sustained 43 sacks. They're second to last in the league in the amount of play action they run. Only Kirk, oddly enough, was less in play action this year. Might not be as mobile. Tough day ahead for Geno, you think?
Yeah, I think it's a tough day for Geno, and I think because of the knee injury, it's going to limit his mobility against an attacking defense on a slick surface. I think Geno is kind of going to be dead meat in the pocket, and I think he's going to get worked. Offensive line is in tatters, as Softy talked about. Starting center's probably not going to go. This has been a bad line. They've struggled in pass protection, and here comes a team that blitzes effectively. So I just think Geno's sitting on potentially a bad game here, and I think they're going to try to minimize his play. I think they're going to try to use a lot of Kenneth Walker in this game, Paul.
And I said this to Nordo the other day. Once I've got the game calling depth chart. Tuesday, I start to assemble it. We're at Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center, waiting for KO or Kwesi Adofo-Mensah in this case. And I was like, we got to the Noah Fant part, and I'm like, how is Noah Fant still a thing in the National Football League? I know he's fast. Maybe, well, I don't know. I just need to learn. He never catches touchdown. He never does anything. He hasn't scored a touchdown in more than 2 years. How's Noah Fant still a thing?
Well, it's because Seattle never prioritizes tight ends.
Wow.
They always
Gil Dissly was better. Why'd they let him leave?
I know. Honestly, he was, Paul. Will Dissly was better.
It's Dill Dissly.
Dill Dissly. And it's, Noah Fant, he went to tight end U, so I know everybody thinks that sooner or later he's going to, turn into George Kittle. But I think at this stage, like 6 years in, he's Noah Fant's a journeyman who gets injured a lot, and that's about all they got from him. And they, by the way, they just rarely even just use tight ends in that offense, both with Pete Carroll and now with Ryan Grubb.
The con.
Vikes Bites! The team, as in our favorite team, the Minnesota Vikings, they had 16 turnovers on offense in their first 9 games. Didn't really like that. But just 4 in their last 5. They're playing a lot cleaner. They've reached 30 points in 3 of their last 4. Charge, is there anything that you have seen that has led to, whether it's the decision-making of the QB? I know he threw that pick on 4th down against the Bears, but all the same. Is it just the ball bouncing in our favor? Fewer turnovers and more explosive offense have really gone hand in hand the last handful of weeks.
Well, 2 things. One, Aaron Jones stopped fumbling, so there's that.
Honey, stop that.
We'll take that. Thank you, Aaron Jones.
We talked about that.
And then the other part was you go back to the Jacksonville game with the 3 interceptions that Sam threw, all to Justin Jefferson. He was trying to work the ball into spots where he shouldn't, and I think he's learned from that. I credit him and credit the coaching staff for convincing Sam that you need to make your second look, your third look, go find Jordan Addison, go find TJ Hawkinson, and find other players rather than forcing the ball in where you shouldn't. And since the Jacksonville game, whatever it's been, 5 games since then, 6, whatever, Sam's really been very efficient with the ball, and he hasn't made those plays that ultimately hurt the team.
Vikes Bites! Stephon Gilmore expected to return. That's a big deal, right? Not just because Fabian Moreau did not participate a couple days here on the injury report, but because Stephon is the preferred starting corner in this mix. Big deal for him with Jackson Smith and Jigba and the season that he's having, his sophomore campaign. Whether or not DK Metcalf is having a good season, he can jump up and bite you at any time. It's good to have Stephon back, right?
Oh, yeah. And you know, it's interesting and you and I talked about this, I think, Tuesday and maybe a little bit last week. The con! The snap counts for Shaq Griffin. I mean, it's when his snap counts are 35 or higher, that they're playing a lot of man defense.
Yep.
Because Shaq he's just tough at the line of scrimmage, but then you got to get a pass rush because sometimes older guys get a little slow when the quarterback's holding the ball for 3 and 4 seconds. I've been thinking about this, and you know, I'll be out there for the end of practice today to record the O'Connell pregame, so maybe I'll ask. Metcalf, Lockett, and Smith and Jigba, with no tight end factor and a running back who catches. I'm just wondering if this is a good man-to-man game. Because generally speaking, when you play man-to-man defense and you're right up on them generally at the line, you bust them up, and then you hope Grenard, Van Ginkel, Jones, or somebody can get home and sack the quarterback. Well, it's when you play man defense against certain quarterbacks and they see the corners turn their back to the offense, they take off. And with the knee situation for Geno Smith, I don't think that's him in this game. He's very good at identifying man defense, from what I understand, and taking off for a little bit, too. I think he has a couple rushing touchdowns this year. But with that knee situation, I'm just curious to see what let it flow, let it flow, let it flow. What he's going to unfurl this weekend, because those receivers, I mean, you know, I know we're middling here with the record with Seattle and stuff, but I mean, if you man those 3 receivers and you don't get home, and now Geno has it for 3 seconds, you're in trouble, right?
Man coverage sounds good until you're looking at DK Metcalf 3 yards away from you.
Yeah, just to land the plane with what Nordo said, that's why having Gilmore back is so important in a game like this if you deem it to be a big man game.
You know, DK Metcalf on almost any cornerback, man, is tricky because you're not going to budge him off his route.
Right.
He is going to bully cornerbacks, and you got to have cornerbacks that can stick with their coverage.
Yep.
And you got to, I'm not the one to decide if you're going to go man on DK, but that is a tricky matchup for any one cornerback to have to try to stick with a guy who's 6'5", 230 pounds.
Right.
That is a spot to be in.
Can you imagine if he and David Njoku played on the same team? And they lined them up next to each other? I mean, when I saw Njoku in Cleveland for the joint practices, I mean,
a beast.
My man likes to walk around shirtless more than Jake Middleton.
He does.
And Wild fans understand what I'm saying. And I just could not believe what I was like, you know, with Bill Musgrave, who works with their offense, used to coach with the Vikings. I'm like, how does anybody ever stop that at anything?
Yes.
It's, maybe he stops.
And sometimes
himself.
they don't.
Maybe he stops.
Well, you know who's going to stop David Njoku? Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Who's going to stop David Njoku?
All right, the con gone to give it to us now, some boxed up verbal beef.
Vikes Bites. Thank you, Thousand Hills. Verbal beef, indeed. You guys have mentioned the offensive line a couple of times, and this was on my list as well. I had Hugh Millen on at the suggestion of Softy yesterday.
Ooh, nice.
For some Seattle-related adversary intel. And I asked him because I'm having trouble understanding, what is the Seahawks' identity? Post Pete Carroll, new head coach. They're not awful at anything, but they're kind of middling struggling in so many different areas. So here's what Hugh Millen had to say about the Seahawks and specifically the offensive line.
The thing about the Seahawks, their offensive line is trash.
Uh-oh.
Just absolute hot mess. I bang my head against not the wall, a moving door. I drink brown liquor because of this freaking offensive line, and it just trying to find holes for the running game and protection for Geno Smith. That is the Achilles heel, the anchor, call it whatever you want.
So that pairs with what you were talking about. Kenneth Walker, who it looks like he's slated to return this weekend. Charbonnet actually popping up with an oblique. So Kenneth Walker back in the mix. He is a guy, PA, that can give the Vikings trouble. But from Hugh Millen's standpoint and the way Softy laid it out earlier, this offensive line is giving zero help to their running game or protecting Geno back behind them.
And for those who may have missed Husky immortality yesterday, with the offensive line for the Seattle Seahawks, all right, they had a right guard, Anthony Bradford, who, from what I understand, from a penalty standpoint, my man had like 8 penalties in 9 games. It was a complete disaster. I don't know if he got hurt or they benched him, but they replaced him with a guy who's going to be making his 4th start this Sunday. Just tough. Just look at the Yale guy who played left tackle for the Bears.
Right.
That's another thing that plays into why I like the Bears is Braxton Jones is going to be back this game. But anyway, rookies against Flores defense, it's just a lot to absorb. So the right guard's starting his 4th game, I believe. Their center, something called Oluwatimi. He's either hurt or
got knocked out of last week's game.
Yeah, well, I mean, the guy they're replacing him with, I mean, we got some problems there too, for sure. So I can't.
Sam Howell got destroyed because their backup center was just
Jacob Lowen or something like that.
Yeah, and he may be back.
Yeah, he's going to play, I think.
Some of it is on Sam Howell, but in a third of a game, which coincided with starting center guy going out.
Yeah.
He absorbed 5 sacks in a third of a game.
It's like, when I played basketball, we would play certain teams where our coach would implore us, and we had a very good team. Tracy Murray on that basketball team ended up being the all-time leading scorer in the history of the Pac-10 and won a championship with the Houston Rockets. We had a really good team, even though I never played. But there would be some teams that we would play against where our coach would tell us, Kent Beckler, Oral Roberts, played with Alvin Adams, don't watch them in the layup line. Okay, just don't. The verticals.
What do you mean? Don't watch them?
Don't watch them. The vertical's 40 inches. They're doing 360 dunks. Just let them go out and do their thing. Certain teams, and we will play the game the way we play the game, and we will win the game because you can watch teams sometimes do certain things, and you get a little intimidated. Like, are you kidding me? With all these Dr. J types on this team, we have no chance to win. Here's the correlation. If you look at Charles Cross and the right tackle for Seattle and left guard Laken Tomlinson, you would think they could pick up the world and move it to another side of Saturn. That's how strong they are. They are some of the slowest, most plodding beef eaters that I've seen all season. Like Braxton Jones and Darnell Wright. I mean, they're big, but they're a little on the nimble side. This Cross, I mean, holy cow. If he gets his hands on you, you're in trouble. But they're just not fast, and they're going against a defense where its speed is in positions that are the worst positions for Seattle to face with these plotters playing on the offensive line. So just don't look at their size, and when they warm up and how big they are and everything, just wait for the game to begin and watch them slip on the turf that is Lumen Field, and Jonathan Grenard might have a 3-sack game right in front of him, the Birch.
Stat guy will note Seattle ranks second from the bottom in pressures allowed. They're 30th in pressure percentage allowed and 19th in average time to pressure. Yeah. So
I'm excited to see this Charles Cross bit.
I bet.
Because like when I'm memorizing numbers and stuff, it's like the back pedal is awkward looking. Big people don't move fluidly backwards. and he's not a fluid mover.
Not a fluid mover.
My final Vike Bite. Verbal beef for you gentlemen is simply enough. I'm excited for you, PA and Bursich and Ben Liebert to actually physically experience this. Team hasn't won since 06. We know the Russell Wilson years. We know the 12s, the low cloud cover, XYZ former player raising the flag. I've heard it so much this week that the aura has kind of been lost, and that goes back into what is their identity. New coach has them in the playoff mix, but a very different vibe at Lumen Field.
Yeah.
Is the aura potentially gone as Go Pack Go chants were clouding out, drowning out the home stadium in primetime last weekend? Some skull chants potentially on the near horizon for those in the Pacific Northwest.
Well, I mean, Softy brought that up with me on Tuesday, and I didn't, I didn't pick up on the Go Pack Go chants. When the game got out of hand, I stopped watching. So if it happened then, it happened then. But he kind of brought that up like the 12s are. Virtually, the 12s being the nickname for the fan base for the Seattle Seahawks, super loud. The stadium, which used to be CenturyLink, the stands are right up on the benches, kind of like Soldier Field, very close to the benches, and it legitimately can impact the game. Softy and his co-host Dick Fain were going down the road of, like, I felt low-key kind of blaming the 12s. And I'm like, no, the 12s have shown for decades what they can provide. If your team's not boring, they'll be loud. If your team's not losing by multiple scores, they will be the 12s. Ain't nothing changed with the 12s. All right, now they got some dispensaries there within the last 10 years, so maybe the 12s,
mellowed out a little bit.
Are a little more chill than they used to be. Okay, that's understandable. It's a segue in the culture and the era in which we live. But the 12s have proven for many years, if you give them a good product, they will knock your socks off with how loud they can be. I ain't blaming the 12s, man. I'm blaming the football team.
Well, some people would say, and I think there are listeners right now saying, even if your team's bad, your fan base should show up. But I always feel like you got to earn it. You know, the players should have to earn that. You don't get the right to have an amazing support, that level of support from your fan base just by showing up. Players, you got to go play. You got to give your fans a reason to cheer you besides we just showed up. You're in the building. That's not a good enough reason.
The 9 to noon production is in the second half of the feast at Buffalo Wild Wings Apple Valley. A lot of people got here at 8 in the morning. Hey, listen closely, please. The servers and bartenders and everything, they've been here a long time today. They're not normally open and we have a packed house. They're not normally open now. Tip them gratuitously. Tip them very, very kindly for the work that they're doing today, because we greatly appreciate how they navigate their way through this crowd. It's quite the art. All right, 9 to noon continues around the corner. We'll pay off the fantasy football feast, and then Alec Lewis from The Athletic, YA. Young Alec joins us about 20 minutes from now on your home for Minnesota Vikings football, FM 100.3 KFAN. Many great things about Paul Charchian from Guillotine League and GuillotineLeagues.com is that he's a man of the people. So he will roam the crowd and copyright Dan Cole, the common man, pat people on the back while he's picking pockets. So occasionally those at Buffalo Wild Wings will hear me say, "Hey, Charch!" Which throws my voice off before games, but that's okay. So there's a little truncated fantasy feast that's going to unfurl here. And from Fantasy Football Weekly, Scott Fish, the co-host, is with us at Buffalo Wild Wings Apple Valley. Hey, round of applause for Scott for picking us up until we find Paul Charchian. How you been, buddy?
Doing good. Thanks.
Help us with this. Patrick Mahomes and the ankle sprain. What do you do this weekend?
I think he's go. I think he's gonna go. He says he's gonna go, so I like him at home this week.
Thank you very much. Chargers back. Scott Fish, ladies and gentlemen, round of
That's all I get. That's all I get.
That was actually if you. Hey, you ever hear of Manny Mota, pinch hitter extraordinaire? Well, you just got a hit, which means you're worthy for a new contract. But I know that you'll be working with Paul over the weekend, so I don't want.
Well, yeah, he's a Fantasy Football Weekly co-host, and he'll be on the show this weekend.
And I don't want there to be weird emotions or consternation between you two. So Manny Mota got a hit.
Yeah.
And now batting, Dusty Baker, the starter for 9 to noon. Michael Penix Jr. Michael Penix Jr. against these ratty Giants. What from a fantasy football standpoint?
Well, first it's the move they had to make, right?
But I wouldn't want if I'm in line to make cash.
Yeah,
I don't want to go down with Michael Penix Jr.
Where it gets, you're not starting Penix. Where it gets interesting though, Paul. What about Drake London and Darnell Mooney? Because, Kirk had been really unable to consistently get production from them. Although Mooney had a really nice game against our Vikings.
I like Darnell.
He's fast. He can get behind defenders. He can make big plays. They never threw to him in the end zone, but that's okay. What Penix will do, and based on what little we know, because Penix only played like 1/4 of one preseason game, so we got no look at him in the preseason.
Yeah.
But what we saw at University of Washington was a strong-armed, deep ball passer. And Kirk, just the arm strength hadn't been there, and he had been throwing downfield, but a lot of it was not connecting. The hope now is that Penix, either in this game or down the stretch, will be able to unlock bigger downfield plays to Drake London, Darnell Mooney, maybe even Kyle Pitts. Although I don't even know if Kyle Pitts is interested in Kyle Pitts at this point.
Yeah, I'm bored with Kyle Pitts.
Totally.
That 4th overall, 7th overall, 8th overall out of Florida, whatever it was.
Yep.
Yeah, he had measurables, tall, arms from Maui to Maine, runs a 4.5 40 for a tight end. Seriously, I mean, Kyle Pitts is a complete non-factor in things.
Because Kyle Pitts isn't interested. Paul, I mean, the buzz, the word on Pitts is doesn't care. He's just not somebody who's committed to being great, even though he's got all of the physical abilities to be great. Doesn't care.
All right.
Happy with his lot in life. So for me, I actually moved when they made the announcement that they were benching Kirk early this week and going with Penix. I moved up Darnell Mooney. I moved up Drake London.
Right.
Because for all the variabilities we're going to get for a first start rookie, I still felt like overall their prospects are better hinging on the arm strength that you get out of Michael Penix than lefty than you do out of Kirk Cousins at this stage of his career.
Okay, so Giants just got killed by Ravens, right? Yeah, it was Baltimore at the Giants.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm watching the game, because the Vikes play Monday night, a rare chance to watch a bunch of football. And I'm watching Malik Neighbors, all right? And some of these moves he's making. Now, Baltimore's pass defense is bottom echelon in the National Football League. Their pass rush isn't as good as it used to be, but it's still a very good football team. I mean, Neighbors was abusing man and zone coverage. The way he sat down in zones with what's called option routes, where it's like, there's an option here. Malik, you can go right or you can go left, and we need to be in lockstep from a quarterback standpoint to make this thing work. And I guess Neighbors is really, really good at that. Malik Neighbors at Atlanta. I like it, but then I just come back to, depending on what your team looks like this time of the year, starting New York Giants with everything on the line. I mean, it's just listen to the way that was laid out.
Well, do you want to spend your offseason knowing you got knocked out of the playoffs because you trusted Drew Lock to get the ball to your player?
Wait, it's not DeVito?
No, it's not DeVito.
Okay.
And DeVito's banged up, but even if healthy, they've decided Drew Lock is their guy.
I know, right?
Lock's passing is pretty sketchy. He's a decent mobile scrambling quarterback, but that's it. Neighbors is great, Paul. And when they assuming the Giants hit on whoever the next quarterback is that they're going to go at top of the draft, maybe it's Cam Ward or Shadur Sanders, whoever, whatever they do at quarterback, in all probability, hopefully not Sam Darnold, Malik Neighbors is going to take off. The guy's great. I mean, you can already see it in him. The separation, the body control, the footwork. He catches everything they throw to him. Malik Neighbors hasn't dropped a pass since week 9. There is a lot to love about Malik Neighbors. He just needs a quarterback who can just get him the ball. And right now, it's all the Giants' passing game is because of these ratty quarterbacks. It's all 4 yards here, 3 yards here, behind the line of scrimmage here. You just can't accumulate fantasy points that way, and they've got no downfield passing attack in New York.
Give me your best 25 seconds on this. A.J. Brown. They got A.J. Brown involved last game after he complained.
Yeah.
Is he a safe start at FedEx Field?
Well, all right, so last week, as Scott Fish likes to say, squeaky mouse got the cheese.
Yeah.
But that we have a whole season of knowing that A.J. Brown's productivity is very, very scattershot, and it's just because they run the ball constantly. They have the highest run rate in the NFL.
Right.
Philly gets ahead, and they run. And they've got Saquon Barkley, who's threatening to potentially even pass Eric Dickerson if everything breaks right down the stretch here on total rushing yards.
Yeah, he ain't going to get there.
I don't think he's going to get there either. But
the last game stuck him a little bit.
The last game did, just 65 yards. That hurt. Nevertheless, this is a run-oriented team, and they distribute the ball to all these different players, and it puts a lot of variability on the field. Now, they play Washington. And I know you said 25 seconds. I'll keep this short. Last thing.
We good.
Washington gets Marshawn Lattimore back as their cornerback. His first game back was last week. They didn't even pass at him. He had 0 passes in his coverage because Lattimore's great. Now, Lattimore's one of the biggest, most physical cornerbacks in the league.
Right,
and he goes up against A.J. Brown.
But FISA, Fairness and Saints Act.
Yeah.
I mean, they're rolling
it was
out
Jake Hayner.
Heinous or Hayner or O-Ring, whatever my man's name is. Well, then Spencer Rattler came in cold, and he was awful.
That's right.
See, I think Spencer can play a little bit.
I do, too.
Just
A little.
some preseason stuff, and Rattler starts this game. So, I mean, Fairness and Saints Act, the Heinous, Hayner, Haynes,
that
whatever
was
it was. That was awful. How bad was that?
And they have no receivers either, right?
Yeah.
Olave's out. And everything.
Well, you nailed the Kamara bit last week until I texted you saying, great stand against Alvin Kamara, who everybody's going to use with the money on the line. And he's having an awful game, like 6 yards.
Yep.
I put my phone down, and there's Alvin running into the end zone.
And some trick play or something, too. It was
that's right.
Yeah, it was some weird trick play to get the ball
Cedric Wilson. Cedric the Entertainer
that was
threw
it.
it to him.
Cedric Wilson threw to him. That's
and
right.
Cedric can throw. He used to throw with Dallas and with Miami. All right,
he's 6 for 6 lifetime as a passer.
I know, right? Okay, let's pause. When we return, the belief is Alec Lewis from The Athletic will join us to discuss Vikings and Seattle Seahawks, plus more. You're listening to the Friday. Let's see how lucid they are right now. You're listening to the Friday Football on KFAN.
You wake up, put on your Ray-Ban Meta glasses. You're living all in. You realize you need coffee. So you say,
"Hey, Meta, how do I make a latte?"
Brew 2 shots of espresso.
After Meta AI gets you caffeinated, you're ready for some beats.
Hey, Meta, play hip-hop music.
You head to meet some friends, but can't remember the place.
Hey, Meta, call Eva.
Ray-Ban Meta glasses, the next generation of AI glasses. Just say, hey, Meta, to harness the power of Meta AI. Shop now at meta.com/smartglasses.